But once it's on a page, you have a lot less control over it. Some other poets who like, I've told that I do this and they're like they can't imagine giving up control. Sometimes I think the reason I write is because I have something that's important for me to say and I don't know how to say it.
Give it up for Nathan for reading with us.
Thank you guys. Thanks for coming.
How you feel?
Great, man. Great. That was fun. I know I told you this a bunch, but I'm really excited about this project. I was really excited to share these, on a stage with people. I mean, that's a good question. It feels like it should be an easier answer. I think just like, I had never heard of anybody like co-writing poems before. And as I alluded to before, the idea of like having collaboration in art is so important to me. And so to find a new way to do that and to share how it is and to share poems that like I had a part in, but that I could have not written on my own, just all of that was really exciting. I mean, so I don't know if you guys would remember, but some people from the workshop are here. And so they have heard at least one of those poems before in like an old workshop, and it's totally different now. Cool way.
When did the collaboration start?
It started in college, actually. Like that's something that we did in college. So I mean, I don't want to think about how long ago that was, right? But yeah, it just kind of happened naturally because I always had this problem where, and I approached this in different ways, but I would have lots of ideas that I really loved and just did not feel like were working for whatever reason. Sometimes I would like have a poem that I realized I was trying to make work because I really liked one line and I would set that aside. But then this became another way to solve that, to where I'd be like, I like parts of this, but it's not working. So I would send it off to Neil, Yeah.
You say solve the problem. How did that solve the issue?
How did that solve the issue? I think that, I guess I just felt like I had exhausted all of my resources. Maybe, they're poems where, because what I want to do in poetry can be sort of spacey, kind of heady sometimes, like I know that something's not working, but I don't have a clear image of what it is I want, right? And so to just like give up control. I've talked to some other poets who like, I've told that I do this and they're like, you have way more, like they can't imagine giving up control of a poem like that. But for the right pieces, like I actually really appreciate it, because like trying to have control over it was driving me crazy, Yeah.
Interesting. So then, if I were to ask you who's in control of a poem, your answer would be?
I mean, damn.
I don't know if I would have a good answer either myself.
No, I think that in the moment of writing, maybe that's the distinction I want to make. In the moment of writing, I think the poet does for sure, And you can honor what you put into it if you can also accept that, like, once it leaves your mouth, or once it's on a page, you have a lot less control over it. But I do feel like I think of it when I'm writing as like something I have control over. Yeah. What do you think? What would your answer be?
What would my answer be? Poems in control.
Poems in control?
There's this idea that like with ideas are almost like this living being, and they need to find a vessel to come out.
Yeah.
And it's like the idea that like keeps nagging at you, but eventually you stop working at it.
Yeah.
And then it's just gonna find another person to turn to.
I felt that way before too, and I'm kind of glad you said that because I think that offers a better way of looking at this. Like if it's so there's poems where like I sent them in this project, in this thing we do. Like I've sent poems to Neil where like I did have a specific thing I was trying to say in the poem, but I'm inviting him to help me see that like the poem might want something different for sure. There are definitely times where like, sometimes I think you do have to follow, like if it's really important to you, then you got to find out what it is you're trying to say. But I think it's best to give up some of your autonomy just to the poem itself. I think that's a cool way of looking at it. Yeah.
I'm really curious about this collaboration because I feel like most collaborations over time fail.
Yeah.
How have you made this work since you were in college? We don't need to name how long that was, but like since that time, probably more than a year. How have you made it happen?
Do you mean in poetry they failed, or just in general? You think like artistic collaborations?
Collaborations in general, but
yeah,
I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because I think of like most. I guess I was gonna say musicians do well, but how long do bands last? I guess you could argue. Yeah. Well, honestly, I guess time will tell, because the truth is like we came back to this. Like, so Neil and I like have been friends for a long time, but we both, we moved to different parts of the country, and I think, I could be wrong here, but I think we both sort of like lost our connection to writing around the same time and found it again around the same time. Like, I forget who reached out to who, but like we hadn't talked in probably a few years, and one of us was like, hey, I've been working on something, I'd love you to see it, which we used to do all the time, and then that sparked it back. So maybe that's it, just that,
I mean, I think that's, I should rephrase, because I think that's the thing about the collaboration that's the most impressive, is the fact it's been long distance.
Yeah.
I think people in this room have had the experience of being in touch with someone and then losing touch the minute they're in a different space.
It's hard to say. I think the thing is like, I can be bad at like reaching out to people, and I think he did it first, but I had like wanted it too. Like, I had like missed having that connection, and I was at the time, I think it was like before I started the workshop, and I was just like hungry for like connection with writers again. And I knew that like I really valued like what Neil and I had, and so so one of us reached out to each other and it went from there. But then it also inspired me to do more, connecting with authors, with writers. But I don't know, man. I think that, what was the original question about like, how has it lasted this long? I think that, I think it's also, this is like a practical point for it, but the way I write, like I have like projects I'm trying to dedicate to, and then I like to have pointed things I can do when I want to work, but I'm too scared to jump into the project I should be working on, Like, so this is like taken over specifically, this is taken over because I'm a procrastinator, right? That's really like engaged. And
so what are you running from?
My own manuscript, like, and then a book proposal too. It's but since I haven't solved that yet, I've tried to make my procrastination more fruitful, I guess, and it's gave us this.
Do you think that having the collaboration be long distance actually makes it easier?
I think it could, yeah.
Like, would this project be happening if he were in town?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe, but I think that, I think that you might be right, and I don't know if I can like prove that, but I think there's something to the fact that like we've developed some flow, and like I know when he's most likely to send me feedback on the stuff I send him. I know he probably knows when I am most likely to send him feedback, but it's still this fact that like there's less pressure on it, that we just kind of do it whenever we have the time, and like the distance does like afford that autonomy that might actually be helping it. And it would, that wasn't on purpose. Like neither one of us decided to, but it could be helping us for sure. Yeah.
I guess one of my last questions is, what sort of collaboration advice would you give to people in this room?
Something that I think that like, so in the last few years, there's a lot of ideas I've had about poetry in general that I thought of as sort of like untouchable, kind of like sage wisdom passed down from generations. And I've learned to be a lot less like precious about that kind of stuff, So this showed up in our collaboration because back then it was very much like I thought that like, you get your feelings attached to a certain line or a certain thing you're trying to say, and the joy of it is like giving up that attachment, And so I wouldn't really try to explain why I had tried to do something. If he cut it, I would just accept the cut and move on, which kind of goes forward to like us talking about being in service of the poem instead of being in service of your own ideas. And that's produced good work, but also since I am sometimes trying to say something specific, we've cut off that sort of like holier than thou, like you can't talk about what you were trying to say. Like sometimes I will be like, I wasn't sure about this line. I was like, well, I was kind of going for this idea, and then we can collaborate on it together, you know? Like I thought I just had to take all of his feedback and maybe him the same, you know, like with no conversation. And there's no reason to do that. You know, like I might still take his feedback even if I do argue for my point, because I want to be in service of letting the poem evolve, but like I'm not afraid to like speak up because of some ideal of the right way to do it, you know? So just kind of like, if you're in this collaborative environment, like, you know, trust your partner and trust yourself. Just kind of keep it open, I'd say. Yeah.
I guess the last question would be, what do you feel like is your own unique stance on writing? Today, in this room, at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I don't know if this will be super direct, but it's, you know, hopefully it'll be interesting. At least you can re-ask the question, I guess. But one of the things that, you know, I mentioned, like Neil and I are very different poets, but I think we work well together. I have always been in search of loud, kind of exhaustive, can't finish your thoughts, there's too much to say, the sort of like almost like religious experience, inspirational kind of like verse. You know, I grew up like on Ginsberg, like that was my guy when I was younger, so just this like breathless sort of quality. And Neil is very much like he's like an artisan, you know, like he's like a sculptor, like shaping something perfectly. And the fact, so we have these different styles, and the fact that we can make them both work are great. And so I do still love that sort of like breathless, you know, quality in writing. I still chase it, but I'm hoping that with my poems, like I know that I'm always reaching for like, sometimes I think the reason I write is because I have something that's important for me to say and I don't know how to say it. I'm like searching for what it is I'm trying to say. And sometimes it's big and heady, but I'm always trying to like pull it back down to earth. And I think that tension of like searching for something that's impossible to reach, but still trying to grab it and bring it down here to us. Like that's what matters to me. That's what I'm hoping that I'm doing special. Sure.
Thanks to Nathan for being with us. We
Thanks,
appreciate
dude.
you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate
you.
Thank you.
So much. Appreciate you guys' work. You guys have